There's no doubt he loves his daddy. Not all dads are great. Not all dads are wonderful. Okay? We know this. But you know what? They were put in a position. Sometimes they choose it, sometimes they don't. Go to the next one for me, John. This is going back from my son through me, all the way back to generations. You've seen this picture before. All the way back to Mr. McInnish and M-Line Pie. Okay, my great, how many greats does that ago? Several greats ago, grandparents. But I come from Scottish and Indian ancestry. And we can look back at our ancestry and kind of get an idea of who we are. My daddy said you got the worst of both sides. You got Scottish, so you're always mad. And you got Indian guts. He says, he said, just stand by. It ain't going to be fun. Go to the next one. Home doesn't need a man in the house. It needs a father. Recent reports to us as a result of lack of father figures in the home of the past 30 years. Okay? As we have lost the father figure in the home. We're talking about somebody that's there consistently. We've seen a 550 increase in violent crime, a 400% increase in illegitimate births, 200% increase in teen pregnancies, a 300% increase in teen suicides. Okay? When you go back 70, 80 years and you look at today and you look back then, these are the things. More than 70% of all juveniles in state reform institutions come from fatherless homes. I saw this on a video. They had to move an African reservation for animals. And they went in there and they said, well, we can't move all these big old animals. So they got a herd of young African elephants, about 8 or 9 of these young elephants, and they said, we can move them. So they moved them over to the new reservation, okay, the new reserve. After about 6 months, they started finding dead rhinoceroses everywhere. And they put up all these video cameras to find out what's going on. And they capture a video of these young elephants picking on a rhino and end up killing this rhino. And they didn't know what to do. And they had an idea. They went back to the preserve and they got the oldest, biggest elephant, bull elephant they could find. And they brought it back to the new preserve. And they dumped him off there. And when they dumped him off there, when the young elephants started messing around with the rhinos, that big bull came in there and started picking them up and throwing them around and beating them up and everything else. And that stopped.
Wow.
Now that's in nature. The importance of having that fatherly figure, that older person to show you the way you should act and what you shouldn't act like. Go to the next one. We're going to talk about Joseph. Joseph is tough. I spent some time doing research and everything else, and guess what I can say? These are some of the hardest words for a man to say. I don't know. There's nothing about Joseph. When you read in there, there's all these things that were written hundreds of years after the fact that say that they think they know who Joseph was and what he was, but nobody really knows. Now, what do we know about Joseph? Joseph probably was not a young person. Why? Because in Jewish society, for a man to wed a young girl or a young woman, he had to prove himself. He had to own his own house and property. He had to have a good, thriving business, or mother and dad is not going to give their girl to this man who can't support them. So Joseph could have been in his 30s, 40s, 50 years old when he married her. So get in mind of that fact. He was probably not two teenagers in love here. That marriages in Jewish society were set up, and it was an agreement between the two fathers, and that one father is going to make sure this other person is well able to take care of his child before he ever lets her go. So, looking at that, Joseph was a just man. Deuteronomy 22:24, and you shall stone them to death with stones. So him being a good Jewish person who was a lawful, and it says he was a good person in Jewish law for what was going on here, for what he was presented with a pregnant young who had probably been betrothed to since the time she was 10 years old till now, and she shows up pregnant. If he followed Jewish law, they would be searching, trying to find out who the other person involved was, the Holy Spirit, and they'd take them outside the city gates and they'd stone them. Joseph decided to go another direction. Matthew, now the birth of Jesus Christ was as follows. After his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, before they had come together, she was found a child of the Holy Spirit. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not wanting to make a public example of her, was minded to put her away secretly. They called it privily, like put her in what we would call back then a nunnery, and put her away secretly. But while he thought on these things, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to him. First clue. If he was a righteous man, God wouldn't send an angel to him. God did not speak to unrighteous people. This was a good man. Appeared to him in dreams, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid. There's our second clue. We know he came down the kingly line, down the line from David. Do not be afraid to take Mary your wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit, and she will bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Jesus. The word Jesus means God with us. For he shall surely save his people from their sins. Then Joseph arose from his sleep, did as the angel of the Lord commanded, and took to him his wife. He brought her from her parents' house to his house, telling her parents, I don't care what's going on. Yeah, we're going to all be looked at weirdly over this whole situation, because in the town's mind, that young girl should be taken outside the city and stoned. But he took her in his house, and he protected her from what everybody else thought or wanted to do. Then Joseph, aroused from sleep, did as the angel of the Lord commanded, took him to his wife, and did not know her until she had brought forth her first son, and he called his name Jesus. He did everything God told him to do. That's how we know he was both a just and a righteous man. Jesus presented a temple. After Jesus was born, Joseph did all the things a good Jewish father should do. And when 8 days were completed, for the circumcision of the child, his name was called Jesus, and he was given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. Now, when the days of her purification according to the law of Moses was complete, they brought him to Jerusalem and presented him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male that opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. That's what circumcision was about. It was a commandment of the Lord. And to the officer, and to offer a sacrifice according as is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. That is offering for his conception and birth, purification offering that is straight out of Jewish law. Joseph followed all the laws for Jesus and made sure that everything that was supposed to be done for him was done. Most people don't think about it, but Mary gave birth in Bethlehem. 8 days later, think about this, ladies, 8 days later, she got on a donkey with her baby and rode all the way to Jerusalem to present him in the temple for circumcision. Boy, that's tough. Joseph flees to Egypt, listening to God's command. So God came to Joseph and said, look, you don't want to hang out where you are. You need to take off and go to Egypt. Matthew 2:12 through 14. when being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. This is talking about the wise men. And this time, the wise men come. Remember, the wise men, everybody gets this idea of the baby in the cradle and the wise men coming. That didn't happen, folks. He was a young boy. He was a young child when the wise men came. They didn't come and show up and he was in a cradle. No, he was in the house. Probably right there at Mary's feet. But they went another way. Why? Because Herod knew what was going on. And Herod was determined to destroy this child. You know why? He feared for his kingship. Why did Herod fear for his kingship? He was not a Jew. He was from Idumea. He was put in the kingship by Caesar. And he hears the king of the Jews has been born. He's fearing for his kingship and for the kingship for his sons. We got to get rid of this. Now, when they had departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Arise and take the young child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word. Get up and leave. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod. He did exactly what he was told. Here, can you hear the continence and the quality of this man? He listened to God. Now, I fully believe God chose and knew foreknowledge who was going to marry, who he was going to put as a partner for Mary. He picked a just man. He picked a righteous man to do this. And it wasn't even his kid. It was a kid of the Holy Spirit. And when they had departed, behold, the angel appeared to Joseph in a dream, taking the child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there till I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. And when he arose and took the child and his mother by night, and departed to Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod. Now, if we wanted to, we can probably calculate how many years that is, but we're not going to get into that. And was there to the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, out of Egypt I shall call my son. That was an ancient prophecy. If you ever get a chance, look it up at the prophecies that were fulfilled throughout Jesus' life. It's a long list. All the things that were said back in the prophets of what the Christ was going to be like and how Jesus fulfilled every one of those prophecies. The next one, please. Joseph returns from Egypt to Nazareth. Matthew 2, 18 through 20. And a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentations and weeping, a great mourning. Rachel being the mother of all Israel, weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they were no more. Herod sent his armies to the area where the child was and killed all the children of a certain age and under, hoping to make sure that he was going to get Jesus. But Jesus wasn't there. He was in Egypt. Now when Herod was dead, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt. 3 times now. In his dreams, the angel of the Lord came to him. Came to him to tell him to take Mary. Came to him to tell him to go to Egypt. Came to him to tell him to come out of Egypt. God loved Joseph. God doesn't speak to people like that he doesn't love and care about. Joseph was a special person. Saying, arise, take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for those who sought the young child's life are dead. Then he arose and took the child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus, one of the sons of Herod, was reigning over Judah instead of his father, Herod, he was afraid to go there. There were 2 brothers, and they fought over. Okay, you had Herod the Great and Herod Agrippa, and then Archelaus, and they had split the kingdom up Rome, the emperor, split the kingdom up and gave one of the sons part of Israel and another son a different part of Israel. He was afraid to go there, and being warned in a dream, he turned aside to the region of Galilee. What did that do? He went to Galilee because in the prophet says, and he shall be called a Galilean. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled, another prophecy that was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. You got a man. He's well off. We don't know the circumstances. If you read the old writings, some say that he was a widow, that he had already been married, and he already had children, and Jesus' brothers and sisters were from the previous marriage when his wife died. That's just once upon a time. Okay? Others say that he was a man in his 50s when he took Mary to wife. And the reason he wasn't around in the elder days is because by that time he'd be 70, 80 years old, and he died of old age. We don't know. But what do we know? Joseph was hand-selected by God. There were criteria. First, he had to be a son of David. He had to come down through the line of the kings. Why? Because Mary was from the line of the kings, David, through two of the sons of David coming down. And so that her and him would be a royal marriage. It took me a while to figure that out and to understand that and trace those timelines and that lineage down there to understand they were both of royal blood. So Jesus was born to royalty even though he lived in poverty. Joseph took a child that was not going to be his. And he made a different decision than what any other Jewish man of that situation would have. That shows special qualities. Fathers aren't always the one who procreated the child. Fathers can be good fathers because they love a child. And that's what's important. It's that love for that child. I have 11 grandkids. Not all of them are biological, straight from me. But they're all mine. Every one of them. I don't care where they came from. They're part of my family. I love them just as much as the other ones. And that's what's important. It's loving a child. I've had to be pretty much the father for two of my grandchildren because their fathers haven't been around. And sometimes, granddad, you're the closest dad that they've got. And you have to step up sometimes and be that person that they need you to be, that example that they need you to be. Because maybe dad's absent. Maybe dad's not the person he should be. And all they got is you. One of the most precious things that happened to me, I was sitting in my living room. I had my Bible open. I was studying for my Sunday sermon. And my grandchild at that time, who was about 4 years old, came in the room and he looked at me and goes, "Papa, what you doing?" I'm studying for my sermon. And it was like it hit me in the head like a brick. The memory back of me walking in the room when I was about 4 or 5 years old and seeing my grandfather sitting in the chair studying for his sermon. I'd become that example that my grandfather was for me. And that was a precious moment. That's what we need to be, men. We need to make those precious moments for your kids that they'll always remember. Father, thank you for this time that you've given us to look into the life of Joseph, a man that you didn't put in the Bible a lot about. You didn't say a lot. You didn't make it important. You didn't make it all about him. You made it about Jesus. You put a whole lot more in there about Mary, but you didn't put a lot about Joseph. Sometimes the father figure is that figure in the background that goes to work every day, does make the money every day, does come home. Mom's the one that's working with the child, and you only have so much time with them. But you got to make every moment important and special. And that's what Joseph did for Jesus. He was that father figure that Jesus needed. He was righteous, he was a good man, and Jesus grew up under the shadow of a good, righteous man. And we can't hope for anything more for any of our kids. So, Father, touch our hearts and our minds. Men, look at what's going on in your life. Are you that example that you need to be for your child, for your grandchild? Are you the one that he can look to and say, I did this, I've seen Papa do this, I've seen Dad do this, and he wants to be like you. That's what we're supposed to be. So help us and touch our hearts and search our lives and help us be what we're supposed to be. This is your moment with your God. He's listening for you right now. He wants to hear from you. If there's something going on in your life, if you know a father that is struggling right now, you need to be praying for that father. If you know somebody that's having difficulties, you need to be praying for them. There's a purpose. God put them there for a reason. You've seen all of it today. So spend that time with your father. Whatever your need is, if you need to come to the altar, if you need to come see me, or see me after service, it's all here for you. In Jesus Christ's name. I want to thank you for joining us here at Frontenac Baptist Church here in Cocoa, Florida, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube joining us. I hope you got a blessing from this Father's Day sermon and all that happened today. Once again, thank you for joining us here at Frontenac Baptist Church in Cocoa, Florida.